All right, shalom, shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh
Yeah.
Shai,
Wow.
Bahashem, Wachakodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And want to give a salutation unto the hopeful elect scattered across the four corners of this earth, striving for salvation. This is the brother Yatazakba here with
Matazawan.
Khan, and this is the GMS Nebraska camp. And this lesson, what we want to get into we want to get a little bit into this article, but we're gonna be talking about this current US Iran uh peace deal that they're trying to sign. And it's happening as we speak. There's live updates. They haven't come to a conclusion as of yet. They're talking about having final deliberations. This article is from NBCnews.com. It says Pakistan says US Iran deal text has been reached, Iran holding final deliberations. And so we want to go into it because they're talking about peace. Um, you know, as Trump, is touting himself, the president of peace, he's gonna stop all these wars. Um, but we know prophetically that's not the Lord's will. That's not, the Lord's plan and what he wants. You know, within the Lord's will, within biblical prophecy, World War III is going to come out of this situation with war happening in the so-called Middle East, with Israel attacking these Middle Eastern nations, uh, the U.S. and Iran going at it. This is biblical prophecy taking place as we speak, and we're going to get into the precepts, and you'll be able to see uh, uh, how it's taking place. And so, keep in mind, even though these nations may be talking about peace, this is most likely going to fall through or be temporary, which we've seen time and time again. They keep on coming together, talking about peace, talking about, deal agreements, and then the last second, it all falls apart, you know? So let's grab Baba Gashal, let's grab Revelation chapter 11, verse 14. Because we're gonna get into, even though you may have these leaders of the earth and they have their intentions on what they want to do, the Most High wants something different, you know? So let's get that.
Revelations chapter 11, verse 14.
Mhm.
The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly.
That's right. The third woe cometh quickly. So what are those woes? And you can go to Proverbs 21 and 1 as well. So what are those woes? The word woe means destruction. And the book of Revelation tracks three specific woes, and it says two woes are past, which is what World War One and World War Two. And now it says what World War Three cometh quickly. And we see uh the Lord making moves for World War III to come to pass. And it would come through what? The least of the flock, drawing these nations out to to uh to fight. As a matter of fact, let's get that first, bro. And in Jeremiah chapter 50 and what's that verse 45?
50 and 45.
Yep, that's right. Jeremiah 50 and 45.
Let me grab that real quick.
Because the scriptures break down what would be happening in this time, you know, beautifully. The Lord has made it clear through these precepts what is going to be happening. Not only do we know that World War III is going to come to pass, but we have the details on how it's going to happen. So let's read this.
We have Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 45. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, and he hath taken against Babylon,
Mhm.
that he hath taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he purposed against the land of the Chaldeans.
Right. And uh the modern day Babylon, you know, what I should rather say is that America spiritually embodies Babylon, you know. Um, this is Babylon the Great. Babylon being that land of confusion, America is a land of confusion. It's all type of different, conflicting religions going on here. There's all type of conflicting ideas going on here. And this place is a melting pot, not only of races of people, but of thoughts, religions, ways of life. And let's read on what it says.
Back in 45, it says, "Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out.
Mhm.
Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them."
So the least of the flock is talking about these Amalekites. The Amalekites are a tribe of the Edomites, which is the so-called white man. So who are the Amalekites today? Is talking about these Israelis, you know, and it says that the least of the flock shall draw them out. Who are they going to draw out? They're going to draw out these different nations of the world and their armies to come to the Middle East and fight. And how are we seeing that happening? Well, let's look at the history of what has happened in that region. You have ever since 1948, and even before that, when the state of Israel was written into legislation, what have they been doing since then? They've been slowly but surely pushing the Palestinians out of out of that land, and that has caused wars for years. But it's getting to a point to where it's boiling to where World War III is going to come out of it. Because what happened in 2024? You had Hamas that infiltrated the land of Israel. I forget the exact city. Let me see. Uh, where did Hamas attack on October 7th? Yeah, so they attacked the Gaza Strip. And from that situation, we have where we're at today. Because from Hamas attacking Israel, you had Hamas's allies that got involved to help them. You had these other Iranian-backed militia groups, Hezbollah, and who came in to help Israel? America. But now you have that it's not just Hamas and Hezbollah that's fighting against Israel. Now Iran has gotten involved. And Iran and Israel are making direct contact and fighting against each other. Now America and Iran are making direct contact, fighting against each other. And this is all prophetic. And these are just steps toward World War III, you know? So that's how the least of the flock is drawing them out. We're seeing it happening right before our eyes. And what's going to happen after this is that, uh, well, we'll get into it. I don't want to jump the gun. We ain't even got into the article yet. So but we must needs grab. Let's go to Second Ezra 15 because we spoke about it. With America and Iran fighting against each other, and that's prophecy, and we're about to read it right here.
It says, Second Ezra 15 and 28. "Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance of thereof from the east."
So it says a horrible vision, and a vision is just another word for a prophecy. It says that it's a vision coming from the east, which is that region of the earth that we're watching all these things go down. So let's read on.
"Where the nations of the dragons of Arabia should come out with many chariots, and the
Mhm.
multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all which which Salakia, uh, that all they which hear may fear and tremble."
So them dragons of Arabia are talking about the Ishmaelites, which is these different Middle Eastern nations over there, and that's where you have, like Hamas and Hezbollah, for example, and them coming out with their, you know, like it says, they shall come out with many chariots. That's talking about them coming out with their armies, you know. Let's read on.
Uh, Also the Carmanians raging in wrath and wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood.
hmm And Salaya says the Carmanians. So who are the Carmanians? The Carmanians is another word for the Persians. And the modern day name for the Persians is what? The Iranians. So it says that what the dragons of Arabia will come out, and the Iranians will come out with them. Now let's read on.
Uh, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians.
Now,
And
the Assyrians right here isn't literally talking about the Assyrians. This is that's also spiritually talking about America, because America spiritually embodies multiple, different places in the scriptures. It spiritually embodies Babylon, Babylon, as we spoke about, Sodom and Gomorrah, Egypt. One of the places it spiritually embodies is Assyria. And when we look at what's happening with this war right now, because like it says, the Iranians will come out as well, and with great power shall they come and join battle with the dragons of Arabia, and they shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians, which is saying that these Iranians are going to deal a heavy blow to America. Should we see that happening right now with the Strait of Hormuz being closed? You know, which is doing what? It's causing energy crisis. It's causing food shortages, gas prices to go up. That's a aspect in and of itself, how, a portion of the land of the Assyrians is being hurt, or a portion of America is being hurt. But you also have within direct military, um, direct military contact, the Iranians are hurting the Americans. They just shot down, their Apache helicopter and are killing troops, you know. So let's read on.
oh yeah, that kind of goes into the next verse. Um, yeah. Then it says, and then shall the dragons have a upper nah. Yeah, yeah. And then shall the dragons have the upper hand, remembering their nature, and if they shall turn themselves conspiring together in great power to persecute them.
So it says the dragons shall have the upper hand, remembering their nature. So the dragons, again, being the Ishmaelites, it says that they would remember their nature. What the scriptures say that the nature of Ishmael was, that he was a wild man. So what this precept is even more showing the point that we're trying to make in this lesson, that the Lord is moving the different armies of this earth into into a mindset of war, you know. Um the Lord will have Ishmael go into that wild man mindset. Now we trying to fight. Ain't no peace. Same with Iran. They keep talking about peace. They keep talking about let's come together and make a ceasefire, and more war keeps coming out of it because that is the Lord's the determination upon this earth that these nations will fight. Have we got Proverbs 21:1 yet?
La.
Let's grab that real fast, and after that we'll finish the second Esdras.
Proverbs 21:1.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will.
Right. So the the different leaders of this earth, it says that their hearts are in the hands of the Most High, and your heart is your mind. So the Most High is controlling the mind of these leaders to do what He wants them to do. And what's a scriptural example that we can think of where this very thing happened? Where you could think of in the book of Exodus, where Pharaoh didn't want to let the Israelites go. But it came points in time to where Pharaoh would think within himself, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and let them go. The Most High is whipping me with these plagues right now. He's whipping my land. I'm gonna let his people go. But then what would the Lord do? He would harden his heart. Or he would basically make Pharaoh be like, man, nah, forget that. I'm about to keep him. It was the Most High that had the Pharaoh getting into that mindset. And what was the purpose for it? That the Most High could fulfill what he wanted to do. Because the Most High wanted to show his power. The Most High wanted to show the nations uh, uh, what the power of the Israelites could do. Who had the true God with them. That was the Most High's intention. And that's exactly what he did with that whole situation of delivering us out of Egypt. He didn't have Pharaoh let us go, because then the different nations would be like, oh, okay, Pharaoh was a merciful, king, and he let them people go. No, the Most High forcibly broke us out of Egypt so that none of the credit will go to anybody but him. And in this time, the Most High is doing the exact same thing of controlling the minds of these leaders so that ultimately World War III will come to pass and prophecy will be fulfilled, you know? And at the end of all of this, the credit is going to go to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai again, but let's get back to that second Esdras. Let's read verse 32, Babu Shah.
Second Ezra, verse chapter 15, verse 32. Yeah. Then these shall then these shall be troubled and keep silence through their power and shall flee.
Hmm.
And from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them and consume some of them, and and in their host shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings. Behold,
Con,
clouds
con,
from the
that's
east and from
con, that's good. That's good at verse 33. So
yeah.
it's so basically what we're reading in 33 is that even though the Iranians is going to deal a heavy blow to America, ultimately America is going to get the upper hand over the Iranians. And that's why it says that the that the Assyrians is going to consume some of them, and in their host, and whose host? And the Iranians and the dragons of Arabia and their hosts or their armies, there should be fear and dread and strife among their kings because they're going to be losing. But what's going to come out of that is Ezekiel 38, where Russia is going to be that guard, and we'll get that shortly. But let's I'll read a little bit of this article from NBC News where, again, it's live updates on this peace deal that they're trying to come to. But it says Pakistan is saying a deal is close. A key mediator in Pakistan has said a final agreed upon text of a U.S.-Iran deal has been reached, though there has been no immediate confirmation from the U.S. or Iran. President Trump earlier pushed back at Iranian reports about the deal's contents. So they're saying that a deal they're coming to an agreement, yet Trump is saying that Iran lying about what they're agreeing on, and there's still conflict.
Yeah, and the main thing, like even speaking on like that deal, the main thing Trump wants is control over their nuclear facilities and how many bombs that they're getting out.
That's
But
right.
Iran wants they want independence. So I don't see where the deal's coming into play. Like I don't see a deal coming.
Exactly. And that has been an issue with them trying to make deals in the past. Because I looked up in Chat GPT, I asked a question. I said, why has the war between the US and Iran continued despite repeated talks of peace? And one of the things it says nuclear program disagreements. And just like the brother just brought up, it says the US has demanded major restrictions or dismantling of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Iran insists it will not cross certain red lines and has rejected some of U.S. demands. So it's a conflict of interest. You need to get rid of your nukes. Iran's like, we're not getting rid of our nukes. No deal. And one person is going to have to buckle to the other. You know? You was about to say something, Knock?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, man, yeah, they started getting the U.S. out of the Middle East exactly because of that. They don't want them knowing any other stuff no more. Like like they don't want they don't want America micromanaging what they got going on because it's
Exactly.
irritating.
Yeah, and that's what America constantly does. That's what America constantly does. I meant to say, so like, America is always in somebody else's business. In South America, I forget you got the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt Corollary. I forget which one it is, but it basically puts on paper that America can police South American, politics and what's going on down there. And it's not like South America asked for that. But America's just like y'all need, a greater power to watch over y'all and see what y'all got going on and make sure everything's all right. And what that does is that you got the situation with Venezuela, for example, to where a um if there's a leader in a South American country that America doesn't like, they can just go down there and remove of them. because they put it on paper that they have that type of jurisdiction, and nobody else said that they could do that but America themselves. And they're trying to do that very same thing over there in the Middle East, but they're not going for it though, you know?
And at a point in time, America actually did have control over their nuclear facilities because there were some things going on, especially after the whole
The
tower situation.
yeah, yeah, it's this the September, yeah, yep, kind of 2001 situation.
And then we got phew, man, it gets even worse because now I got another precept in mind in Joel.
Kind, let's get that.
It was in 3, correct?
Yep.
Where's that?
If I'm thinking about the one you thinking of, probably Joel 3 and 9.
Yeah. It says right here in Joel 3:9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare for war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and in your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say, I am strong.
Let the weak say, I am strong. So
Con,
you have nations that are not on the level of America or on the level of a Russia or a China, but now they're saying I am strong because they're doing what? They're evening the playing field. That's what Iran is doing. They're evening the playing field because once you have a nuke, it don't matter how big you is, you got a weapon that's gonna stop the fight in one blow, you know?
got to a point where Trump was talking about, oh, Iran doesn't have a navy. Next thing you know, a whole helicopter got shot out the air. It's like,
Exactly. And so this precept is even more showing what the Lord putting these nations in a warlike mindset because it says what that beat your plowshares into swords, beat your pruning hooks into spears. What's a plowshare? What's a pruning hook? Those are tools for agriculture and farming. That's a peaceful mindset. You chilling, you just worrying about your living. You just out in the field farming. You ain't worried about fighting. But the Lord, like, take them tools of agriculture, turn that into weapons, and go fight. Which is basically saying, don't be all docile no more. Don't be in a peaceful mind state. Don't be in a just letting anybody do whatever they want. Go fight. That's what these Middle Eastern nations are doing. Now they're saying, man, we're not about to let Israel do whatever they want. We're not about to let America do whatever they want. And these nations are aware that they may be outgunned. But we see Iran, they're using their strengths to where in a straight up one-to-one war, they probably couldn't win, or maybe they could, because you have the terrain of Iran is very mountainous. So if a bunch of American troops was to get sent over there and this turned into a ground war, it would be very difficult for them to fight the Iranians because they wouldn't be used to that terrain. But Iran is using their strength, which is what? That Strait of Hormuz. They like, man, we got one of the most important chokeholds in the world right here, where all this trade goes through. If y'all not going, if y'all want to get froggy, we'll just shut everything down then. And that's what they doing. The weak saying they strong. And it's beautiful. It's the scriptures is jumping right off the page, just like we were saying before the lesson. The scriptures is jumping right off the page, bro. You know, um, let me see. I'm gonna read a little bit more in this chat GPT right here. It says another reason that peace deals keep falling through is because military actions continue during negotiations. So they'll be talking and trying to come to an agreement, but war is still happening. People are still fighting. So before, you know, the military gets the notification like, hey, time out, y'all chill. They didn't shot another, ship. Or they didn't shot a helicopter down. They didn't killed somebody. You know, it says there's conflicting conditions for peace. Right. One person wants one thing, the other person wants another. But this right here is probably the most, not the most important, but this is a very important part where it says regional actors are involved. It says the conflict is not only between the US and Iran, issues involving Israel, Hezbollah, and other regional groups are affecting negotiations and can trigger renewed fighting even when direct US-Iran talks show progress. So even if the US and Iran hash things out, you got the US's ally in Israel, which is going to just spice things right back up. You know, you have the Iranian ally in Hezbollah, which is going to spice things right back up. You know, so this is just going this is going to keep getting worse. You know, again, don't give too much credit to these news reports and these different ceasefire talks that you see. Filter it through scripture. Remember what prophecy says.
Uh,
Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai wants war to happen. Yahweh
yeah,
Hashem. Go ahead, bro.
yeah. I was about to. Dang. I was about to say, yeah, we're gonna hear of these wars. You know, there'll be rumors of war, but like ultimately, a lot of things have to come first before this war goes into full blown, World War III.
Con,
So
that's true. Yeah.
that's just the point I wanted to make.
Yeah. Before we see World War III to where people are hitting their nuclear buttons and you know, we get to the end of this war, there is going to be things that we have to see happen first. For example, we have to see Russia get involved, and we can go to that, bro, in Ezekiel chapter 38. Let's get that. There's other prophecies we have to see take place, outside of the war, such as, martial law, famines, you know, so that's a good point, but a next step that we're going to see in this war that's going to escalate it even further is that Russia is going to be involved. And as the scripture is about to say, Russia is going to be a guard to some of these nations, and we're going to see what nations it names.
So like, what was that? Where was that at?
Ezekiel, Ezekiel chapter 38.
Okay, all right. We got Ezekiel chapter 38, and then we're gonna start at
You
5.
start, you start verse 1, bro.
Kind of. All right, it says, "The word of the Lord Yahweh came upon me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him." And
So this is talking about Russia. That's who God is speaking about here. You
mm,
know, um, it says the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Through the spirit, even the pronunciation of Russia, how do you say chief prince in Hebrew? Chief being the Hebrew word Ra'ash, prince being Shar, Ra'ash Shar. Well, that's like Russia. And so even through the spirit is showing who this is speaking about. But let's read on.
Come. And say thus, the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech, and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all the handling of swords,
So
all them handling swords, Salaki.
now you good, bro. So again, the Lord is going to be turning these nations to do what he wants them to do. And we see what the Lord says that he's going to do with Russia. So he's going to put hooks into their jaws. And you can imagine, like, for example, if you have like a horse, what's that called with what they put on the horse where like when you handle the horse and you can steer it and like make it do what you want? Is that a bit?
Yeah, you put the bit in the mouth, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
sap,
and you,
take the Salaki. Go ahead.
not Salakia, bro, Salakia.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay, but that you steering the horse to do what you want it to do. Well, that's what the Lord is doing with Russia to where he's steering Russia to do what he wants to do. He putting hooks into thy jaws. I'm about to steer you in this direction. And what is being done is that the Lord is bringing Russia back to a Soviet Union type mindset, you know, to where at one point post Cold War, Russia was in a peaceful state of mind. And Russia was real chill. But now Russia is doing what they want. And how we see that? Look at the war that's going on in Ukraine. Why does Russia want Ukraine in the first place? Because part of the territory that is in Ukraine was once a part of Russia when it was the Soviet Union. That's showing that the Lord is steering Russia, to go where he wants them to. You know, I'm Slocky. I don't know why the brother dropped out, but I'll continue. Lord willing, he'll join back. But it says, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So I was talking about, all you know, the army troops coming forth to fight. Now, this is the important part here. It's like in 1 second. Let me see here.
All
Okay,
right.
kind of, brother. All right, yeah, yep. You can read verse 5.
Kind of back in Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 5. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, and with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer,
So, Salakia, before you read on, so it said Persia. Now, as we established already, Persia is and Iran is the same thing. So we're going to see why it's naming these different places. It names Iran, names Ethiopia and Libya, which are African nations. Let's read on.
Gomer, and all of his bands in the house of Taga, Tagama, oh, Togomor, Yeesh, Togoma, in the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee.
So Gomer and Tograma is talking about Turkey, and says and many people with thee. So even nations that's not named here is going to be with Russia as well. Um, you could think China. You know. Now let's read verse 7 and see what is the relation with these nations to Russia.
Uh, Verse 7, be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them.
Exactly. So all these armies that's going to be with Russia, fighting with them, it says what that Russia is going to be a guard unto them. So the same way that America is being a guard to Israel, that's how Russia is going to step in for Iran eventually. You know, it's going to come a point to where like we read in Second Ezra 15, America is going to get the upper hand on Iran. America is going to be start to win that conflict over there. But then we're going to see these other nations get involved. And we're already seeing little hints of that, where when when America was messing with Venezuela, for example, or when they was, um, when all that rah-rah was going on in the Caribbean Sea, Russia was sending a warship over there, and they didn't even do nothing, but there was just a Russian warship nearby, just so their presence was felt, you know, and that's showing you what that's the Lord hinting, like, hey, remember, Russia's gonna get involved eventually and get at America, you know. But let's see, that's it with that Chat GPT. That's basically all the reasons that it had. Um, Let me see if there's anything else in this article. It says, tensions remained high around the Strait of Hormuz, where two Iranian drones were shot down last night. Says, earlier yesterday, Trump said the U.S. would at some point seize Karg Island and take total control of Iran's oil and gas industry, although he later pulled back. Like, he talked about taking total control of these people resources. You think they just gonna let him do that? But
Uh,
yet they trying to make peace.
because I'm pretty sure that's going into like OPEC, and that's multiple nations. It's not just Iran.
Mhm.
So I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong though.
Now, I couldn't tell you. Let me look it up. OPEC. Yeah, it says the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries is an intergovernmental cartel enabling the cooperation of leading oil producing and oil dependent countries in order to collectively influence the global oil market and maximize profit. So yeah, you on point. That's
Yeah.
multiple.
So yeah. So once again, that's multiple countries. It's just of course, Iran. They have a good variety. Like they have much of the oil, but like, and that's also a good route. You know, the Strait of Hormuz. We need to get through that in order to get a good amount of that oil. But it's the fact that are those other countries gonna be all for it?
Hmm.
Because as far as we know, the countries like Canada is not wanting to fight this war with America and Israel, and every other country were like, nah, this is not our fight. So honestly, like, there's no other way to get it besides to continue this war.
Con, con. So it says, yeah, yeah. Hey, that's basically it with this article, bro. It's just going into, how they, talking about peace deals, but there's no confirmation. Um, but for the time being, they fighting, and we're gonna see them continue to fight. And as the scripture is telling you, you know, hey, the scriptures say that the Most High is not a man that he shall lie. If the Lord said it, it's gonna come to pass. Not. Let's get Isaiah 55 and 11. And after that, we'll get Second Ezra 9 and 5, and then we'll close the lesson out.
Isaiah 55 and 11.
Yep.
Isaiah 55 and 11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it.
Right. So each and every one of these words in these scriptures is going to come to pass. It's the word of the Lord. Uh, the message that is coming from the prophets. We are the mouthpiece of the Lord. We're speaking on behalf of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. So the prophecies that we're preaching and saying are going to come to pass, they going to come to pass. You know, and it's not because we saying it. It's because it's through the Most High. You know. So let's get that second Ezra 9 and 5, and we can close the lesson out.
9 and 5.
Mhm.
Con. All right, second Ezra 9 and 5. It says, For like at for like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest.
Right. So there's an end to this current rulership that is over the earth today, which is Esau's rulership, which is American dominance. There is an end to it, and it says that what the end is manifest, which means that is being clearly seen, is being made evident. And how is the end? You know, um, you know, we're seeing how it's being made manifest. All this is leading to is Esau's downfall. Uh, this is all going to culminate to America being destroyed. This is all going to culminate toward what? Like the scriptures say, all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows. Where all these different nations on the earth that hold nuclear capability are going to shoot their missiles at America, and it could possibly be that Iran is going to be a part of that demolition. That's why they don't want to shut down they nuclear facilities. Or that's probably why the Lord don't want them to. Which was about to say,
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like, if they're seeking independence, like, that means that they got something big. They got
mhm.
something big in mind. If they're saying, "Nah, we don't want you checking up on us. You cannot see these nuclear facilities," and man, that means they got something. Like, why do you think we haven't heard of Kim Jong Un for some time?
kind of,
Like, literally, just think about it.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the end is coming soon. Keep praying until Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai that these times are hastened, because now things are moving. The prophecy of the MOTB is moving. The prophecy of World War III is moving. Things are happening, and we have to pray that the Lord continue to speed these times up, and that we be protected from these coming troubles. And pray that we be of the elect, so that we may be saved from this coming destruction. So, hey, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Tarkwadash, giving double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect. Hey, Shalom.
Shalom.